Welcome to Moving Iron with Casey Seymour and Greg Peterson, the podcast for anyone and everyone involved and interested in the business of ag equipment. If you want to understand what trends and market forces are impacting the price of your iron, you've come to the right place. Buckle up, it's time to move some iron.
Hello and welcome to Moving Iron Podcast. This edition of the Moving Iron Podcast is brought to you by John Deere. I've got Greg Machinery Pete Peterson on here to talk about what's happening in the marketplace. Greg, how you doing today, bud?
I'm doing well, Casey. How you doing?
Doing good. Finally got some heat, man. It's been we had 3 weeks of cold weather, it felt like, and now we got some heat coming back in.
It's been a weird spring. Yesterday I was up in way up in northern Minnesota, almost up in Canada, and it was low 40s in the morning, and I drove home to Rochester, and it was 85 by the time I got home. So a little bit of that heat you're talking about.
Yeah, we got this week here, and then the Panhandle is supposed to be, I think we've got some 90s on the board, so that'll be good. And we had about a 3-week stretch there where it was pretty wet, which was good. Guys had their crops planted, so they got a nice water them in well. So that'll be good till the good old Panhandle, Nebraska heat comes in, which it usually does about this time of year. And
yeah, it's June, so we shouldn't. We knew it's coming. Here comes the heat, right. I guess.
Exactly right. Well, this is that time of the year. I always say there's 3 buying periods every year. You've got you got the first quarter of the year buying, which is a lot of deferred money goes in. People are buying stuff. You see a lot of stuff, people getting ready for the year. You've got this the end of the year auction cycle, which we've talked about quite a bit on here. But this middle of the time frame right here, this June to August time frame is I call it the post planning buying period, and a lot of that is uniquely you see some stuff there for a lot of planters, a lot of sprayers, and those kind of things get sold that are coming back in on trade during that time frame. Greg, as you take a look out there right now, are you seeing similar patterns where you feel like maybe this cycle that we're in right now is probably peaking or picking up a little bit as we move towards the second half of the year?
Yeah, I think I would say so, Casey. I mean, like we've talked about here the past couple months on our weekly chats, started to see a little solidifying auction pricing activity, I would say, kind of late February, through March into April. And then, like you say, I mean, you get to June 1st, it is kind of a different point in the calendar. So I'm always interested to see how the first, few really nice auctions, whether they're wholesale, maybe the dealer side or consignments, or, farmer auctions as they pop up, how they do. Mm-hmm. And I was just looking right before we hopped on here, our friends at the Steffes Group had a couple, of course, they have a ton of great sales out there. Check out steffesgroup.com, folks. They're very, very busy, but they had a big dealer sale. I think it might have been yesterday for kibble, some late model equipment. I thought it did pretty well. I know they got 500K out of a 23 X9 1100, just under 600 engine hours. Of course, maybe if you're a dealer, of course, hope it would bring more, but you got 500,000 hard cash. And again, I was looking at those numbers. And then on the farm side, I think they had a sale in Malcolm, Iowa yesterday, June 10th, just to show you, again, spending habits when the right piece of equipment is showing up. So they had a pair of Case IH 8920s, low hour, very nice, both mechanical fronts. So, late 90 models, pre-def, of course. But they had one of 2,819 hours brought 89,000, which is the 6th highest ever. And actually, we just saw one May 21st in Webster City, Iowa, 97 model with 1,416 hours go for 92. So again, when the item is right, the dollars are there. So it'll be interesting to see how the rest of June into July goes.
Yep, for sure. Also, another thing in this time of the year is when I start paying attention to, I kind of take inventory levels the first quarter of the year with a grain of salt, right? 'Cause so much stuff gets delivered. So much new used equipment hits the marketplace. This time of the year is when I start looking at, okay, are we still going up or are we starting to go back down? If we're still going up inventory wise, you've got a problem. But if it's starting to, level out or start to go down, then you're kind of, okay, right, we're back in a normal cycle here. We're kind of moving things forward. I haven't had a chance to really dive into those numbers yet, but I'm looking forward to that. And I feel like we should see some tapering of those numbers as we move into the second half of the year. Another thing too, I think that's kind of pointing at, hey, you know what, things are starting to turn around a little bit is there's been some, the Purdue farmer sentiment thing they do came out. It was actually up quite a bit. The the rating was quite high compared to what it's been in the past. And one of the things they talked about that they were going to upgrade, that they were going to go out and spend money on, was equipment. So some of that should start to taper over there. And I think we're starting to see that a little bit, kind of like what we've been talking about here week over week, is that auction, the marketplace is starting to stabilize. We're starting to see some numbers there. We're not seeing huge swings in numbers anymore. Just like you talked about, I mean, I know $500,000 for an X9 1100 with 600 hours on it sounds like that's a pocket full of change, because compared to what they cost new. But that being said, I've watched that same machine sell in past sales for with a 4 in front of it, right? So you're starting to see some solidification in the marketplace where those higher dollar items are starting to slowly creep up, but that being said, so is the retail value starting to shrink too. So you're starting to see a good kind of meeting of the middle, I guess, there a little bit. You start looking at how things are priced, which is bringing people back to the marketplace.
Agreed, Casey. In fact, if we build on that X9 1100 example, I was just looking for, we hopped on here, that so far this year, the average auction price is $522,400. And last year it was $485,825.
Yeah.
Now, of course, last year there was a huge influx of not just that model, but all combines, 8250s, Case H, tons of them, right?
Yep.
But I think you're correct on the supply side. Again, if we talk to our dealer friends, they would wish, of course, maybe inventory levels were lower, but we live in a world, and we all do it. We get caught up in the today and the now.
Right.
But if we compare back to where this market was 12 months ago,
yeah,
and we just finished our quarterly Machine Repeat Used Values Index report, kind of for the investment community. And by category, I go back and look at our supply and demand charts, tracking the traffic at machinerepeat.com by subcategory. And then, like you say, tracking the supply, raw number of units for sale, and much better balance. Is it all roses and sugar petals? No,
right.
But it's just better. And
right.
I think that Purdue, the sentiment surveys are interesting. And by the way, I'm a Purdue father. Our youngest daughter graduated from Purdue. They're great. Doctor mentored there. That survey is awesome. But I've always found that the sentiment surveys lag the auction pricing. And because it's sort of by nature. I mean, the auction, like that X9 1100, that sold yesterday. And it's got 579 engine hours on it. It's selling like Mason City, Iowa, or wherever it was. And okay, someone's got to write a check.
Right.
500. Oh, maybe a year ago, maybe it was 487.5. Now it's 5. So that the numbers, it's like a breadcrumb trail. It always tells you our farmers. And I guess the thing is, belts have been tightened for quite a while now.
Yeah.
So, there's only so many loops in a belt.
Right.
And we're just, like we've talked about a lot, and you said it, Casey, we've kind of gone far enough now where you're getting into the need, maybe that sprayer or planter or or that combine, where the numbers are hard cash are just a little bit better than they were.
Yep. And I also think too, from the supply and demand side, and what's driving this in the marketplace too, is the overall, the age of the fleet right now there was a lot of 1-year-old stuff that got put out in the marketplace, and there always is. It's always there. But if you start looking at the average age of the fleet, we're still in that average age of like 6 to 7 years for a piece of equipment, which is really the oldest it's been. I think we saw that kind of happen back in 2014. We saw that kind of peak up through there, and we saw that, but it never really changed from there. Whereas, previous times we'd seen, that was a little more compressed than what we've seen in the past. So
yeah,
there is a need to update equipment.
Yeah, I think you're right, over the last decade, as the dollars involved have just got to increase so much that I think that's forced that stretch out factor that's sort of become the reality. And again, warranty coverage.
Right.
Wow, yeah. What a huge factor that is. I can't remember the sale bill I was looking at recently. We look at so many of them every day, but there were 2 tractors, and one, I think it was a Fendt, and it had warranty coverage. And you can just, when you look at that, you can just feel it like, oh, that one goes to the top.
Right.
Because I've got coverage.
Right.
When dollars are tight, yep. And, repairs are expensive. That's just the way it is. But, yeah, it's a really interesting market right now. So one of the things I'll be watching, I think we touched on it maybe last time, but as we get towards the end of June into July here, these summer farmer dealer consignments, what is going to be the level of, because right now the level we're seeing at auction is way off. The number of units, late model units, is way down from
Yep.
last year, like X9 1100s. That's why the average is up, because there's been less of them sold.
Right.
So will that hold? It's kind of looking like it will, but
Yep.
we'll see what tomorrow brings.
All right. Let's put your speculation hat on here and let's talk a little bit about where things are headed. I've had plenty of conversation with folks that are on the dealership side that have talked about, we're probably going to do one more, even though we don't want to. We're going to do one more auction this year, and then hopefully that'll clean us up and we can move forward as we start kind of getting the stride back into this end of the year, which I think 25 and 26 is a different conversation altogether as far as how equipment looks. As you look at how things are shaping up, Greg, do you feel like it feels like it's like in the air a little bit, right? There's some uneasiness in the air around inventory levels at dealerships that some folks are looking at doing something they may or may not have done in the past, just when it comes to how they're looking at auctions. As you kind of do your travels and talk to people and those kind of things, how do you feel about that right now? Do you feel like there's going to be a peak in auction activity towards the end of the year?
Well, yeah, that's the key question, Casey, hitting on, trying to figure, and it has applications obviously on the dealer side, dealing with the inventory, but then also on the farmer side, you're trying to say, will it be like last year? Will there be an avalanche of, will I have my pick of 1, 2, 3-year-old sprayers, combines, tractors, planters out there? I don't think we're going to see the volume we saw in 24. I think that pause button that's sort of been on semi-pause since sort of second week of December. Dealers were so aggressive last year, and they sold so much. Now, if I were on the dealer side and dealing with, trying to assess, I hope it doesn't get to a situation where they go, I wish we would have sold more in the first quarter, Q1 of 25, because the auction pricing was better than we thought it was going to be. That's what we've been reporting on, again, since about the third week of February. Historically, before, this is pre-COVID, but the first 30 years I did what I'm doing, auction pricing tended to soften through the summer, early fall. Mm-hmm. That kind of went away the last 5 years because the world changed and online bidding and everything. But to me, it's sort of feeling like we're just going to hold. So I don't think we'll see the volume, but if I'm on the dealer side, I mean, I'd be encouraged. Maybe again, I'm sure they wished it would have brought more than 500 yesterday, but like you said,
what's been
that's an outperform. I think that's so I guess, and this is from my dad being a third generation dealer. You don't want to be late to the game on whatever the trend line is, like selling, pushing it out at auction, or late is not good. So I think the big X factor where I think everyone's kind of watching is just that interest rate thing.
Yeah.
There's tons of pressure on the Fed now. It was blowing up on Twitter this morning. Again, there's politics involved, whatever. But will they lower interest rates? And can that be a further pressure release for a dealer if you're sitting on extra inventory? I mean, you still got to move it. But and then across the top of this, and you've been talking about this a lot over this past couple of months, it's just, we can't forget what's happening at the manufacturer level,
right?
Pinching off that, tightening that spigot. Yep. So as we go along farther, that's where I've sort of been in the farmer's ear this year. Like, you might want to be a little more aggressive on the buying side, whatever you need used, because boy, whenever this thing does turn around, if used is less inventory than it was a year ago, and everyone's been tightening their belt, and you don't want to be buying when everyone else is buying. That's the bottom line.
Yep.
If you can help it.
If you can help, exactly. Yeah. And I think as you look at, and I've said this on here a couple of times, go back and look at what happened in 2009, 2010, coming out of the Great Recession, as manufacturers shut off the production lines, and you saw late model, low hour equipment spike up, and when that spikes up, everything else below it spikes up too, right? Everything, all high tides raise all boats, right? So you get that same factor as you walk through there, and I think similar thing to happen here now. Nothing like COVID. COVID was just that was an outlier that it sucked the equipment dry on everybody's lot, on everyone's lot, and then filled back up real quick at the same time. But I don't think we're going to see that again. But we'll see. I think because even if the manufacturers tomorrow say, all right, we're going to go back to full force, that's 12 months, 18 months before they're back to there, right? So
Right.
they got to get that flywheel generated again, get people hired, get all the supplies they need, all the things they need to get to do to make stuff happen. You can't just do it overnight. So use equipment to have an opportunity.
Exactly. So if you're on the farmer side of this thing, and again, even those belts are still tightening, and so it's interesting. Like the Purdue survey, things are loosening, and they're indicating they're going to be spending more on equipment, and that I think that's very wise at a gut level for Joe Farmer, because I think tied in with that is they're looking ahead too and seeing what we're talking about here.
Mm-hmm.
And so once the footing gets set in on the hard cash auction pricing, which again kind of happened surprisingly to me, I'll admit it. I mean, I didn't think I would third week of February into April and May, I'd be writing about, wow, auction pricing is not only solidified, actually ticked up a little bit.
Right.
So when that happens, rest of 25, particularly this summer, this off-season buying you've identified could be a tremendous opportunity, whatever your need is, that tractor, that combine, that planter, to get it at a good price. Again, reading the tea leaves here. I lost you there, my friend.
Yeah, my computer was going to die. I all of a sudden went from...
Computers do that sometimes. They
thought.
I have no data on used computer pricing, although I think they're like even worse than cars. Once you get a new computer, you drive it off the lot and it's worth like nothing.
Yeah, you can spend a lot of money on a computer, and a year later it's worth about a third of what you paid for it. So, yeah, for sure. Well, I think there's a lot to pay attention to here, Greg, and like you talked about, this is I think one thing I will say to people if you're watching this is that this is the time. This is one of those times where making a plan of what you need to update on your farm and what that looks like for you to update that on the farm is really an important time to do that, because you've seen what prices have done since the first of the year, right? They've incrementally creeped up, and I think we're going to continue to see that go. And again, if things turn around, we see some crop prices come back in that are a little bit higher than where we're at right now, and it starts to drive that used equipment space, you're going to see the price of equipment go up. And it could go up, go up 5 or 10 or 15%, whatever it is that it goes up. But that opportunity for you to really take a hard look at what you're doing in the farm is right now. You need to be thinking about, if I'm in the market for a combine, you're never going to buy a combine cheaper than you're going to buy it right now. If you're not, it's same thing with a tractor, planter, or whatever it might be. Because I think as things progress and move on, you're going to see the price of used equipment creep up to where it's going to be a higher.
Yeah, that counterintuitive, being as you're able,
right,
with your financial situation, but being aggressive, conservatively aggressive. I have a friend. He says that's the right way to talk about this, Pete. Be conservatively aggressive as you're able, and that's that plan you're talking about. Because now, if you don't have to catch a falling knife, and you know that the pricing is solidified, it's not tanking like it was a year ago, that tells you stuff. And I think that's why I think farmers, that survey is indicating they're, feeling a little more bullish on updating whatever their used equipment needs are.
For sure. All right, Greg, probably a good place to stop. If folks want to have you come speak at one of their events or show up at your auction, the easiest way to do that, just go to machinerypete.com and click on the contact page.
Yeah, hit our website, drop us an email, or hit me on, Facebook or X, whatever. Do have a couple auctions I'll be going to here. Going out tomorrow to shoot a preview in Mapleton, Iowa, for a June 21st sale. That's a fantastic sale. And always love going to the auctions. And so just hit us up on machinerypete.com.
Right on. And you and I are going to be up at the end of the crop tour there, up in your hometown actually, up there,
Yeah.
Minnesota.
Yield Academy, yes, in Rochester, Minnesota. What is that? August?
I don't have the date in front of me here, but it's
Forget the exact date, but it's the last day of crop tour right here in Rochester. So yeah, come on out, folks. Casey and I are doing they got us doing, like a seminar type thing, Q&A.
Yeah, I think we're gonna record the podcast up there, do a kind of a live recording, and then we're gonna have do a couple speaking sessions there. We're gonna talk about what we see happening in the marketplace, and then another thing too, we'll have just some opportunity to catch up with folks and ask us some questions about what we see happen in the market. So we'll have all that knowledge out there, I guess, that they think we have, and we can go up there and
we might have to organize something. So after Yield Academy, after crop tour, we'll be right there in Rochester. Maybe we should go out. Everyone, come on, let's go have a beer somewhere.
I dig it. I like that idea a lot.
We'll talk more about these used equipment trends. But no, that'll be a great day coming up. So again, check it out, folks. You can go to agweb.com. You'll find information on it, and should be great fun.
Yep, it'll be a good time. I think for some reason I think it's August 12th, but I could be way wrong on that.
Actually, I'm such a tech dinosaur, Casey. I have this phone sitting right here that has it right on my calendar. So if I could just look, August 21st.
August 21st
is Thursday. Yeah, be in Rochester, Minnesota, folks. Come visit me and the Yield Academy. Obviously, crop tour is an amazing event. So wrapping up, getting dinner, hearing the results from Chip Flory and his team. And then, we'll be there all day doing the Yield Academy. Casey and I talking machinery. So if you got questions, coming out, and it should be great fun.
Awesome. Well, Greg, appreciate you being on the podcast. We'll catch you again next week.
Sounds great, Casey.
All right, stay tuned for more Moving Iron podcasts after these messages.
Well, there they are, mocking you.
See you next year, loser.
That weedy area that's got you thinking, man, I hate that spot. Wish I'd sprayed better. Get the last laugh with a sprayer upgrade from John Deere. Precision upgrades that can increase your sprayer's performance, like ExactApply, advanced nozzles to give you more control at more speeds. It's just one of the many precision upgrades you'll find at johndeere.com. Now, let's see who's laughing.
Hello, welcome back to Moving Iron Podcast Markets. I have got Sean Hackett from Hackett Financial back on here to talk about what's happening in the world of commodities. Sean, how you doing this morning?
Doing really good, coming off the second win for the Florida Panthers, 2-1 against my favorite team, the Edmonton Oilers. So far so good, and we're hoping they can repeat the Stanley Cup winners. So we'll see what happens.
Right on. It's cool to have a cold weather game in an area that doesn't get cold. So
they actually say that because it's so warm and humid this time of the year, as much as they try, the air in the stadium here is more humid than it is in the stadiums to the north, and because of that, the ice is a little more stickier. And of course, typically the Western teams like to play a faster game, which is hard to play on the Panthers ice, and the Panthers are more of a physical, down and dirty, grinding it out kind of a game. So it gives the Panthers a little bit of an advantage. And last night was no disappointment. We handily took care of business yesterday. So
awesome. Almost there. So keep plugging away.
Yeah.
And we'll see what happens with the hockey. That's nice.
Yeah.
All right, man. Let's talk a little bit about what's happening in the grain market. So we have hit first I'll talk about the weather here real quick first. So we've seen some very favorable weather across the United States in the growing areas, but you talked about that. You said you're going to see some coming out of an area where we're going to see some colder temperatures and colder areas, which that happened. We saw it up north, had some threats on spring wheat and those kind of things. And then we've seen a kind of leveling out where in my area, I bet we had 5 inches of rain, the last 2 weeks, which is more rain than we've had probably in the last 2 years. And you've seen that kind of stretch across the grain belt. And with that, now we've seen that kind of shut off. And if you look at the forecast now, you talked about seeing warming into the end of June and start seeing that really pick up in July. I think the temperatures where I'm at now went from being, basically 68 to 72. Now we're going to be looking at 87 to 95, depending on the days that you're looking at. So we're starting to see that warming trend come in that you've talked about, and a lot less water in the forecast. So I guess, Sean, looking at this, if you look at the corn market and what soy market has done over the last couple of weeks, we're kind of in that cycle where we gain 5 cents, we take back 7, we gain 5 cents, take back 7. So we're kind of going back and forth on this topsy-turvy scale that we're looking at. I guess as you're looking at this, Sean, where are we at right now in the market, and what do we need to see happen to move the needle in more of a positive direction?
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake that I'm hearing from the market is, well, seasonally we top out in late June. We need to get sales made. We need to get our the market's topped out already earlier in the year. That was it. And I understand seasonals, but seasonals are a guide. They're not a guarantee. And since 2012, we've had consistently hot, dry May, Junes, and consistently cooler, wetter Julys. And so you've had that rally and fall. And then by the time the hot weather comes for August, it's too late. Nobody cares. Harvest is coming. And when you make a harvest lows in mid-late August and mid-late September, I mean, that has been the seasonal pattern since 2012. And I've been saying on your show for months, quite frankly, that this year was going to be a different year in that we were looking for a more favorable, cooler, wetter May, June, giving little reason for the market to rally on weather. But we're going to have a warmer, drier July. So we're going to go from a good start, a challenging middle part of the growing season, and then I think we're going to have a good finish. I think like by mid-August onward, it's going to be cooler and wetter again. It is going to lead to problems in harvest. Obviously that's not something we worry about today, Casey, but just kind of always trying to project out further what our work is telling us, that the fall is going to be cold and wet. Not great news for a fast harvest. Not great news if you're trying to harvest grains. If you want high quality grains to be harvested, you're going to have a lot of disease issues. You're going to have a lot of wet corn. It's going to need to be dried down. It's going to be extra costs. And there's a good chance that the northern plains, can have a frost in let's say late September to kind of prevent crops to finish to maturity. So there could be a pretty good rally actually. Once we make our July high, because our idea this year, Casey, based upon what I've just mentioned, mid-late July is your top, not mid-late June. Then you have your knockdown into August, maybe let's say early September. But then we could get quite a rally here on a cold, wet harvest season as well, especially if we can clip some yield in the northern plains into the Canadian prairies on a late September frost. That's the way it looks to me. So if I'm thinking about cash marketing, if I'm thinking about where's my second good chance to get sales made, as we were very aggressive on making sales earlier in the year when prices were high. We think late July, we're going to be looking for an opportunity to get at least 50% of our new crop sales on the books, and then look for maybe making additional sales on this harvest rally that looks very likely to us, because this could be a harvest that really, really, really drags out, and then your quality of crop really falls. So the higher quality end of the spectrum could be pretty short. So that's kind of what it looks like to us. This is just based upon weather. There are other factors this year, as you know, Casey. Obviously, China has played this card of restricting rare earth metals, which they dominate. I think they have 90 to 95% of the processing capacity in the world, meaning you don't buy rare earth metals unless you get them from China. And obviously, anyone that knows anything about AI and the military, and most cars nowadays and phones, and we all have a ton of rare earth metals in them, and without rare earth metals, everything stops. So they really have us good. And so all of a sudden, ever since they announced that they were going to stop selling rare earth metals to the world. We've amazingly suddenly had this turn of events, and we're talking. And we had this big discussion in London yesterday about let's get together, let's hug. You're always my favorite. So I think we're gonna get a trade deal fairly quickly here. We really can't do without. Can we? Is there places elsewhere to produce rare earth metals? Absolutely. If we wanted to, could we do that? Absolutely. But it's going to take 3 to 5 years to do it. So what we need to do is we need to keep China our friend until we do that, if that's what we want to do. But in the meantime, our economy will come to a standstill if we don't get rare earth metals, including our military. And so the bottom line is we're going to get a trade deal. I don't know what the details are. I don't know what the longevity is. I don't know if it's just a short-term pop, but it's coming because of rare earth metals. That is the great equalizer. And I think, quite frankly, whether Trump knew or didn't know, or his administration knew or didn't know, it seems like they maybe miscalculated how important that was. Meaning, and so it's going to really challenge President Trump's tariff policy in terms of what he was hoping to get done. I think he now realizes, at least with China, he kind of got himself into a box, and he's not going to achieve what he wants to, at least not right now. And so that's where we're at. So it's a negative in terms of the Trump administration not being able to keep this going and putting more pressure. At the same time, for grain markets, it could be very positive because it could bring some extra demand into the equation that the market maybe wasn't anticipating coming as fast as it looks like it may be coming. Obviously, no guarantee. Every day is a different day, but I really think this rare earth metal is a game changer, and I think they're going to quickly resolve this. Obviously, I don't think it's a question of are they going to raise the mandates, the EPA. They are. It's just a question. Originally, everyone was talking about mid 5 billion gallons, up from 3.3. Then there were rumors saying, well, it's only going to be in the mid 4.5. Anything better than what we have, especially if the focus is on using more domestically produced feedstocks like domestically produced bean oil, it'd be positive. So whether it's 5, I get it. 5.5 is more bullish than 4.5. But if we just get some increase of that in that range, it's very, very positive for soybeans. It's positive for grains. It means more soybean acres are going to be needed. And it looks like, from what we read, it's within 1 to 2 months, and that was like 3 weeks ago. So that looks very positive to me. That we're going to get that. So I think between rare earth metals pushing for a trade deal, increase renewable diesel, and a July weather problem, something that we haven't had since 2012, that combination with the funds really, really short the grain markets in aggregate, that says to me we can get a decent rally that the farmers can sell into. How high we go, we just have to see how bad is the weather. Remember, how hot it is very important. What is the EPA mandate? What are the trade details? I can't know all these things, but I would think that the highs that we saw in new crop corn, new crop soybeans, and wheat that we saw earlier in the year, it wouldn't be surprised to me if we at least retest those levels in July at minimum. And we could very easily exceed it depending on how these things all kind of synchronize and come together. So I'm pretty optimistic that once we get through this choppy, frustrating part of the trade here in the mid-June, we can see some better trade action thereafter.
Right on. Okay. Let's bounce over and talk about what's happening in the protein markets. We've seen some positive movement for a while on the hog side of the business. As you look at it, Sean, what do you think's happening there? Well,
in our report this week, we kind of made a bold call that we think the great rotation, the great consumer rotation is finally underway. What we mean by that is, Casey, that there's been this concept for at least 18 months that high-priced beef was going to push the marginal buyer over to cheaper pork as a protein source. And it really hasn't materialized, but it looks to me I'm looking at the latest demand side numbers that we're looking at, pork demand is starting to really go year over year, and beef demand is actually backing off, and hog prices have outperformed. I'm going to repeat this. Hog prices have outperformed cattle prices. I'm going to say it one more time. Hog prices have outperformed cattle prices since early April for the first time in years. And that's an indication that we're getting this consumer switch over. Ever since the tariff war began and we started to get consumer sentiment really tank, and we're starting to see the housing market get under duress, everyone is now starting to really look at their budgets. And, you can reduce your coffee consumption, but probably not going to move the dial on your budget. But if you look at where beef prices are at the supermarket and where beef prices are at the restaurants that you go to, you cut back on that, and that can have a meaningful alteration of your budget. And I think that's starting to happen. And you look at where pork prices are and how undervalued pork value is. It's too compelling when people are afraid they're going to consume protein. They're just going to consume more pork protein. And I think, and if you look at the history of the relationship between hog prices and cattle prices over 50 years, which we've done, we're at one of the more extreme undervaluations of hogs relative to cattle in history. And anytime we've seen this, we've always gone back to parity, where cattle prices and hog prices are fairly close to each other. That doesn't mean hog prices are going to $2. I'm not saying that. It's a combination of cattle prices ultimately coming down and hog prices going up. But we actually think we don't see cattle prices. We don't see cattle prices coming back down to $1.20 or lower. I think they're going to be at a more permanently higher level. Maybe $1.50 is your lower, 140, 150 might be your lower rung on the live cattle side, which means that the hog market's going to have to make new all-time highs if we're going to get back to parity. I think we need to reprice the pork protein complex. It's too undervalued. When something was too undervalued for too long, the market finds the demand for it. And so I'm really feeling that hogs could be in a phase shift to where we're going to make a new pricing regime change higher to new all-time highs, and then we're going to stay there. And then in terms of the cattle market, we've had these long-term targets. I mentioned them on your show before, of 220 live cattle on August and 320 feeder cattle August prices, and we've kind of within reason gotten ourselves to that level. We went back 55 years and looked at every time we've topped out in the cattle market. It's always occurred the year the herd rebuilding began, and it typically occurred in the third quarter of the year the herd rebuilding began. And if you look at the history of diseases in the cattle industry and in the animal industry as a whole, when diseases come out, the duration of how long that disease issue will create higher prices, it typically has a 6-month fuse before it burns itself out. Whether it's avian flu for dairy, whether it was African swine fever for hogs, with cattle we've had foot and mouth disease, but in this case, the worm issue in Mexico, it all says the third quarter. It really, anytime in the third quarter we can make our final high here, and this final push to these extreme upside targets says that we may be very, very close to printing a final high, given what I've just mentioned about the history of when cattle prices like to top out, and given what I think is this grand rotation away from red meat proteins to more of your pork oriented proteins. This looks to me like and in grilling season, obviously, we don't grill in December. We're coming near the end of that. We're nearing the end of that demand bulge that we tend to get, and so everything says to me, boy, cattle producers really need to be sharpening pencils and really doing everything that they can to try to protect their equity at these levels. We know that it's the best of times, it's the worst of times in cattle, and we've seen a lot of years where the red was flowing in terms of losses and such, and it's been a good period here for the last couple of years, but it's not going to last. It never will last, And sometime in the next couple of years, I'm going to be on your show, Casey, and we're going to talk about how much money they're losing again. You got to find every possible way to get longevity in your equity protection, whether it's LRP, whether it's cash sales, just finding ways to lock in this price level. I can't emphasize how important this last push to new all-time highs is to do that. I really feel we're at an important inflection point here on cattle.
Right on. Okay. All right, Sean, probably a good place to stop. Folks want to reach out to you and get more information about what you're doing over at Hackett Financial. What's the best way to do that?
Our website is Hackett, Hackett, advisors.com. Our Twitter page is @Faradix11. Also have a LinkedIn page. From time to time, we do put out some information on there on our outlook for weather and for different markets, sometimes soft ag, sometimes livestock, sometimes grains. It's a good place to go to keep tabs on what we do and to see if what we do might be of value to those listening and watching your show.
Right on. Sean, appreciate you being on the podcast. We'll catch you again next time.
Sounds good, Casey. Look forward to it.
Right on. Stay tuned for more Moving Iron podcasts after these messages.
Looking for more accuracy, more productivity from your current planter? Let's get exact with precision upgrades from John Deere. Start with Exact Emerge and get accurate singulation and spacing at 10 miles per hour. Or choose Exact Shot to promote early root growth and cut fertilizer costs. And with Furrow Vision, save time by verifying seed depth right from your cab. Visit johndeere.com/planner upgrades and see why nothing runs like a deer.
Hello and welcome to Moving Iron Podcast. I've got Anthony Stasinski. Did I say that right, Anthony? Did I nail it? Awesome. Anthony Stasinski here from John Deere to talk about what's going on in the world of planter automation. So a lot of stuff to talk about there, a lot of technology on the planter side. Looking forward to this, Anthony. Welcome to the show. All right, man. Introduce yourself a little bit. Talk about your time at John Deere and how long you've been there.
Yeah, so I've been with John Deere for 14 years now in a very different array of positions, starting out on the manufacturing floor, spent some time in customer support, and then now moving into the marketing realm of things after some aftermarket positions, and really lead our initiative from planting and seeding. So anything that puts seed in the ground kind of falls under myself as far as responsibilities.
Right on. Okay. Well, let's talk about some of the stuff. So some of the things that have come out on the planting side over the last 10 years, let's just start there. Start with the last 10 years when you start looking at the, Exact Emerge, Max Emerge technology that's come out, and how the seed meters come together, what that looks like. I guess it's probably a good place to start there first. Let's talk about that and kind of the evolution of that seed meter to where we're at today.
For sure. So you mentioned Exact Emerge. Max Emerge 5E is kind of the scaled down version of Exact Emerge, right? But Exact Emerge, that brush belt technology, able to singulate either soybeans or corn, get you that great spacing, get you that great emergence that you want from that crop. And really all of that new technology that we continue to bring. So Exact Emerge has been in the market now for 10 years. Which is hard to believe that 2014 it came out, and really that to me was a major change at that point when you talk having that meter come out, having dual electric motors, so a motor that runs that bowl, a motor that runs that brush belt, that ability to stop that at the end of the field and not continue to spit seeds out, and just really everything from a singulation, from kind of, I guess, total package that it can provide you, whether you want to go 5 miles an hour or if you want to go up to that 10 miles an hour, right? That spacing that you get with the seeds, the singulation that you're able to get with the seeds, the stand that you get out of it is just something that's next to none.
Yeah. I remember when that came out, I was thinking, I don't know how many people really want to go 10 mile an hour when they plant. And boy, did that didn't take long for that bug to catch, because it went from 4 to 5 mile an hour to 7 to 8 to 10 pretty quick. Now that evolution was fast. Yeah,
and I think the last few springs, if I kind of reflect a little bit, you really had time was of the essence when it came to that planting window. being able to get that crop in on time, being able to be productive when you had those short windows to get, to get the seeds in. And, ExactEmerge is something that allows you to go up to that 10 miles an hour and still do a really quality job, as you're going through that. And again, maybe 10 miles an hour isn't for everybody, but we've got a lot of customers now, to your comment, that that's the only way they'll do planting.
Yeah, I don't know many customers out there that aren't 10 mile an hour guys, or at least 7 mile an hour guys anyway, for sure. Yeah. And you're right. That planting window thing's a big part of that. And you watch planting progress, and I think this is the one. It's the one report that comes out that I think has zero merit anymore, but that's just my opinion. But it's one of those things where you're down 10%, you should be at 25%, and by Sunday they're back up to 35%. And that's because of the technology that we see on these planters anymore, and how fast they can go, and precision and the preciseness of which they plant. So definitely a big deal.
Yeah, and I mean, having that direct link to getting the crop in at the right time, hitting that window, and what you see from a yield benefit at the end of the year, like that is a real thing. There's real dollars on the table there. So really being able to do that, and ExactEmerge, again, being able to do that at speed with the quality that it does it, really allows all that to come together.
Right on. Yep, for sure. All right, let's jump into some of this technology that we see that's coming on there now. So about 3 new things that come out this year. You've got seed leveling sensing, fertilizer level sensing, and vacuum automation. So let's run down that list real quick and talk about those 3 things and what they do.
Yeah, so new for 2026, we have both seed level and fertilizer level sensing. So really what that does is give you the ability in the cab to see how much seed do I have left, how many acres can I do, can I make that next round, where do I need to have my tender positioned. Same for fertilizer, right? So being able to see how much fertilizer is left on, where does that tending need to occur. The nice thing with both of those is really you can see that in the Ops Center, right? So you get your tender driver hooked up with Ops Center Mobile. He's able to see and check in on where those levels are. Hey, how long do you have until you're going to need seed, until you're going to need fertilizer, which really helps that logistics kind of play, if you would, that, really, as a customer, somebody's in the planter, somebody's running around trying to get everything else done around the farm. It allows them to kind of work more productively without having to make those phone calls, call over on the radio saying, hey, I've got X amount of time till I'm going to be out, or I think I'm going to be out about this time. Really allows those 2 guys to stay in sync as they go throughout the season. That next one that you hit on was vacuum automation. So we've had a form of automation with vacuum for a while now. It was really, you kind of set it, and then the tractor would maintain that for you. So if you set it at 17, 18, it would maintain that. So as the temperature of the oil changed, as those conditions changed, the tractor really kept it where it needed to be or where you set it. When we start talking kind of active vacuum, now it's starting to look at things like singulation and spacing, singles, doubles, and take those into account and start varying that vacuum for you as those conditions are changing throughout the day. So it's really similar to before. You would set where you want it, and then beyond that, it's looking at those other pieces that it can look at, from a singulation, singles, doubles, really looking at that to be able to understand, hey, do I need to go up, do I need to go down, and making those adjustments for you.
Yep. Okay. All right, a couple of technologies have been out for, I don't know, a couple of years now probably, but you look at like ExactShot, for example. Very cool technology when it comes to one, making sure the fertilizer gets in the right spot, but also limiting the amount of fertilizer that you spray out there, so it's reducing the cost. So I guess talk a little bit about that technology, how you see that working with the technology we've talked about, and some of the benefits you're seeing from that.
Yeah, so when you think fertilizer systems, we've taken kind of this slow step. So we started with ExactRate, 5-6 years ago. Exact Rate, really allowed you that ability to have row by row shut off. Now when you start getting into Exact Shot, you're getting to that seed level shut off. So Exact Shot really allows you to dose that product just on the seed in a 1 inch, a 2 inch, or a 3 inch band. So you kind of have that ability to say how much it is you want to put on. And now your savings are directly correlated to obviously how wide that band is. The nice thing is you're able to kind of move that band around. Where do you want it to hit on the seed? Do you want to lead it? Do you want to tail it? Do you want to center it? So you kind of have that ability to make all those different adjustments. What I would say about it is, typically we see people doing a 2 inch dose, which ends up being about a 66% savings in product. So really on that, on that fertilizer pass, customers are able to save, a big chunk, which is input cost, but that also helps them be more productive. So one thing we heard a lot from customers who've run it the last couple of years is, hey, before I could get 80 acres, 100 acres in, and then I was having to refill that fertilizer, and hey, my seed was another 100 acres, and stuff was kind of mismatched, and stuff wasn't always out when I was filling, but it was, I had to kind of fill it regardless. When you start with that savings, you're able to go with 200 acres and really match that seed fill. So you can tend to both seed and fertilizer at the same time. Really heard customers say, hey, I could see myself getting further and further in front of my neighbor just because I wasn't having to stop and fill.
Yeah.
And I think the best thing about, Exact Shot is through our trials, really, hey, you were able to save that on the upfront side. You were able to be more productive. But in the end, it doesn't matter if you don't get the yield, right? And through the lead trials we've done internally and externally, really that the yield is no different than running a continuous band. So we've really been able to prove out, like, hey, you can pull back on that input and still get the same output, and really from an ROI perspective works out pretty good from a customer standpoint.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Furrow Vision. That's a new one. I guess I'm not familiar with that one.
Yeah, so Furrow Vision. Furrow Vision has been out in the market for a couple of years now, but it's mainly been what I'll call more that pilot stage. So a limited number of customers running it. Still doing some testing, still working some bugs out. It is now available from a full production standpoint. But what Furrow Vision is essentially a camera down into the furrow. So if you take a 3-section planter, there's a camera on the left wing, the center, and then the right wing, centered up on all those. So you kind of end up with 3 cameras across the planter. And really what that camera does is a few things. So one, it gives you kind of some eyes into the furrow, what's happening real time. And really with that, you're able to then see, hey, how are my row cleaners doing? Am I getting debris coming through? Am I hairpinning some debris in with that seed, where I can make real-time adjustments and bump those row cleaners down and clean that up? Secondly, from a downforce perspective, right? So most people nowadays, if you're running high speeds, you've went to some type of hydraulic downforce. Now with that, it gives you a wide range of, hey, how much pressure do you want to put down on the ground? Furrow Vision kind of gives you that second set of, like, hey, what's happening real time in the furrow? Am I putting too much pressure on where I'm actually collapsing the furrow before the seed enters? Am I going too light where I'm not actually firming that furrow enough to where the seed can make it to the bottom? And then again, kind of gives you that ability to make those real-time adjustments to make that furrow a little bit better and ensure that the job step, I would say, the planting step ends up with a quality outcome. Lastly, there's a laser incorporated with the camera that actually measures the depth of the furrow. So you'll get 3 depth readings for a left, a center, and a right across that planter, which really gives you some insights, throughout the day as those conditions change or as you hit those different soil types. what the depth of that furrow is actually doing. So, a great example that I heard from a customer was, every time I came to the top of this hill, I would start seeing my depth shallow up by, a half an inch. So I had it at 2 inches. By the time I'd get to the top of the hill, I would be down to 1.5 inches. And I've always had problems in that area, but I never really could understand what it was that was going on. And knowing that my depth was shallowing up, I was able to actually slow down a little bit and really ensure that the depth was being hit. And through that year, really the top that I would typically see a change from the bottom of the hill to the top of the hill, really cleaned up year over year. So as it's out there, we're finding more and more kind of, I would say, use cases, but I kind of laid out the big three that I would see with Furrow Vision.
Okay, I've got some experience with ExactRate. I've sold a planter or two with that on there, but as you look how that's working now, talk a little bit about what that does.
Yeah, so we talked a lot about ExactShot, which is the seed dosing technology from a starter fertilizer. ExactRate is kind of that step back from it, so it's more that row by row, continuous flow, gives you that turn compensation ability. So as you're going around those corners, you can vary that rate row by row and ensure that the outside rows that are moving faster are getting the same rate as the inside rows that are moving slower. With that, just more precise application of that fertilizer and ensuring that, the job we're doing with the fertilizer and putting that in at the time of planting, that we're actually getting that where it needs to be. It's been a great, I would say it's been a great option now. I don't remember exactly when it came out, but it's been out for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And it's it really laid the way for ExactShot.
Yep. So let's talk a little bit about the precision upgrade side of this. If I'm looking at upgrading my planter, how much of the stuff can I add as upgrades to my planter?
Yeah. So I think that's the cool part of all this, right? So take Furrow Vision, for example. At this time, Furrow Vision's not even available from the factory, but it's available through Precision Upgrades.
Okay.
As something you can go backward, be backwards compatible with on planters as long as you have SeedStar 5. So that's one of those things. ExactShot's the same way, that you have that ability, ExactShot, ExactRate. So actually everything I talked about today, besides fertilizer and seed level sensing, if you get on to SeedStar 5, vacuum automation becomes something that you can use, or the active vacuum automation. ExactShot's opened up to you, Furrow Vision's opened up to you, ExactRate's opened up to you, and then obviously ExactEmerge and MaxEmerge 5E. Those are, the row units that we offer, and now even the meter upgrades that we offer to be able to go from MaxEmerge 5 to MaxEmerge 5E and from MaxEmerge 5E to ExactEmerge without having to replace that entire row unit. Those are all things that we offer.
That's one thing I like about that row unit too, is that you made that option where you can just change the meter, not necessarily the entire system to make that work.
Yeah, they've done a really good job of being able to be backwards compatible with those row units, and really work ourselves into a spot where, if you've got an older planter but you are looking for this newer technology, and looking to have the outcomes that people that are continually maybe keeping up with the market, like it is a possibility for you to be able to keep the piece of equipment that you have, update that technology piece of it, and then be able to see the results that others are seeing.
Yeah. And the one thing I like about the upgrade side of it too is that I don't have to buy a complete kit to upgrade everything all to one level. I can take my time and introduce those things to my operation as needed.
Yeah, for sure. You can kind of do a stair step, or if you're having a problem in a certain area, right?
Yeah.
So, hey, you have maybe pneumatic downforce, but you have upgraded over time and you're now going a little bit faster, and that ride quality of the row unit isn't where you would like it to be. You are able to do kind of that hydraulic downforce kit. be able to get hydraulic downforce across the planter. Or, hey, I have a ME5E, but I really want to go to the brush belt that the EE has and pick up that little bit better, singulation and seed spacing that the brush belt provides with the ExactEmerge. That is something you can do now. So I think, as we continue forward, it's really the way, right? Planters are super unique. Everyone does things maybe a little bit differently, depending on where you're at in the country and depending on what soil type you have and everything else. So I would say planters always seem to be pretty unique. So really offering that ability to take those bits and pieces of where you're having an issue and update that with some newer technology is pretty awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Anthony, I think that pretty well wraps it up, man. If there's anything I missed that you want to make sure we talk about?
No, you nailed all the subjects I had.
Right on, man. Well, if people want to get more information about this stuff, what's the easiest way to do that?
Yeah, easiest way to get more information, Deere.com, either under planting or air seeding, to be able to kind of find the at least the products I'm in charge of, or visiting your local John Deere dealer.
Right on. Well, Anthony, I appreciate you being on the podcast, taking time out to explain how this new stuff's working with planters. So I hope to talk again soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Casey.
All right, stay tuned for more Moving Iron podcasts after these messages. Mark your calendars for the 2025 Moving Iron Summit, September 24th through the 26th in Austin, Texas. We'll dig into what's happening in the used equipment market and how dealers are adjusting. It's a chance to connect with others in the industry, share what's working, and get a better handle on what's ahead. You want to be part of the 2025 Summit? Visit movingironllc.com for all the info. Hello, welcome back to Moving Iron Podcast. Get Aaron Fennell on here to talk about what's going on in the world of equipment. Aaron, how you doing this morning?
I'm good. How are you, sir?
Doing okay. We got the, this is there's like 3 buying cycles in a year. And I like to pin those on. You got the first quarter of the year, and then you've got the last quarter of the year, and then you got this buying cycle here right at the end of planting season. And that's kind of where we're at now. And typically that's more than not, you see a lot of used planters get sold this time of the year, but also see a lot of combines and tractors, those kind of things get sold too. But the unique thing about this time of the year is that this is a lot of buying happens because, hey, you know what? I'm going to buy something this year, but I wanted to make sure my crop was planted and what it looked like when it came up, and then what's the weather look like as we move forward. And this is the period that we're in now. So I guess as you're looking at the world that we're in right now, Aaron, what are you seeing right now? And are you seeing some elevated level of buying, or are you seeing just status quo is what you would expect?
No, I would say you're right. I would say I'd agree. There's kind of 3 periods in a year.
Yep.
Pre-plant, post-plant, pre-harvest, which is the same, and then post-harvest.
Right.
So we've been in a world where the early order planter thing, that's been a thing for 20, 25 years, right? Yeah. So what that's done is that's conditioned the used buyer, by and large, to wake up and pay attention right now. Yep. It took probably, I want to say 10 years, but maybe even 15. But in the last 5 to 10, it's really becoming a trend where you'll for sure sell some used planters in June and July. And that's the cool thing about it is it's not the handiest because you're buying it and you don't need it for 11 and a half months.
Right.
Versus we need a planter. We should go to town and look at one.
Right.
That's not a thing anymore. But where you're buying it so far out, the beauty of it is you just got done with yours and you know what you need and you know what you want to change and what you want to do. So it's very fresh in your mind versus you know, doing that combine sometime first quarter or a non-wheat combine now.
Right.
Because, oh yeah, that's right. We did have that trouble, and I forgot about that. You know, that kind of thing. It's where that scenario is kind of the opposite. It's the most removed from what you just ran because it's what you're going to run next.
Right.
You know, I've also seen.
Yep.
This is, you know, the middle third, we'll call it.
Mm-hmm.
The inner third. The inner third is very this time. Not so much typically, unless it's kind of a last minute deal, but this year it's been hot for sprayers. Because keep in mind, you know, we're in the 2 years in a row now, we're in this last minute buying stuff.
Right.
It's too much to be on my balance sheet, and interest is too high to hold it. So wait till the last minute.
Right.
So there's, you know, dealing with that, there's plenty of sprayers still, you know. Middle of June and still selling sprayers. Pull type, self-propelled, whatever, you know, need a sprayer. So there is a lot of that. But the biggest thing I guess I would hit with what I think of this time of year is basically early order on used planters.
Right.
You know, now's the pick of the litter.
Right.
So
you have an opportunity to get the planter that you're looking for fresh out of the field.
Right.
With and you get the opportunity to pick the one that's going to do what you need it to do for your business. Yeah.
Yep.
Right now. Right, for sure. And it's not a hurry up and wait scenario, right? It's a you get it now. You have, like you said, 11 and a half months to get it synchronized to what you need to do. And then you do that, and then you're in good shape to make that thing push forward. So yeah, it's a definitely a great opportunity to look at a sprayer or a planter this time of the year. And that's typically what you see move this time of year: sprayers and planters, those kind of things. As you're looking at the overall marketplace, where do you see row crop tractors falling at right now? Because this, again, you see some people kind of stick their head up and get row crop tractors, but typically row crop tractors are first quarter of the year, last quarter of the year. What are you seeing right now in row crop tractors?
Above average demand. Honestly, it's not there again, like everything else. Nobody is in fist fights at the door for the over 500 items, over $500,000 items. But when you get, under that threshold, tractors are active. The biggest thing with tractors right now is it's not necessarily the I have to or even I want to. It's more of a there's just so many out here. I feel like I should take advantage.
Right.
You know, that we're deep enough into that row crop problem now that's the buyer sentiment. Guys out there. Well, I know them late model ones. Some of them are getting pretty wild. Do you got any of them? That's literally the conversation. You know, this guy's had no part in the auction race and all that business and dealing with all that, but he's aware and he's curious what's going on, and let's dip our toe in the water and see what's out there.
Yep. Yeah. I think the row crop tractor side of the business is, if you watch the month over month and the quarter over quarter information, there's a lot of that supply is growing, right? There's no doubt about that. So interested to see what happens here. I got some data coming to me. I got to kind of crunch it here a little bit, but see where that's at quarter over quarter. But it feels like that row crop tractors and combines are the two that have the biggest amount of growth over the last 6 months of the year, which you would expect to see that the first quarter of the year, right? Because you see that with the amount of machinery that gets sold and delivered in that first quarter of the year. So you would expect to see a growth in equipment. So I always look at the first quarter of the year as, hey, you know what? This is just typical buying cycles. You're going to see an influx of used equipment. It's this time of the year right now.
For sure.
Well, I mean, this time of the year for me, June, July timeframe is, if it's still growing in June and July, you have a problem. If it's not growing in June and July, then it's just normal business. And I hope that's where we're at after I crunch these numbers.
That's the with. I kind of feel like combines are they're kind of that 800-pound gorilla or the elephant. They're the 800-pound gorilla elephant in the room is what they are. Because we're, as in the dealer world, we're so accustomed to them constantly. If you have one, you have a problem, right?
Sure. Yep.
And we got plenty of them. And they're not quite worth the pride that their price sticker would say they are.
Right. Yeah.
And everybody's in the same boat.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
But the track, we're so used to combine problems in the dealer world, all dealers, that it's like, oh, yeah, we got combines and they're wrong too, but what are we going to do with these tractors?
Right.
A row crop tractor problem is so Greek to everybody that it's like everything on this and, oh, yeah, don't look over your shoulder. They're still there.
Yep. Yeah, I think
the other thing, and we've talked about this a little bit on here, I mentioned it, the sprayer thing.
Yep.
As someone who loves to pinpoint this, almost 100% tech-driven purchases.
Yep.
It really is anymore. Nobody is. If they have an ExactEmerge, they want See and Spray. If they have nothing, they want ExactEmerge. Nobody's going ExactEmerge plain to ExactEmerge plain or a regular sprayer to regular sprayer. It's, I have this level, jump to the next.
Right.
And that's a big thing as far as what's pushing some of those purchases right now. That I think that is a big factor in pushing some of that last minute is with ours, we have a couple used See and Spray rigs and guys are I get regular calls on them.
Mm-hmm.
So and that is just because what I'm getting at with that pushing part of the last minute thing is of the guys I talk to on those things, it's, well, we want to get into that, but we just want to make sure, it's there, it's working, and it's the latest version we can get before we jump in and all that kind of stuff. Because everybody's always, is I got all the updates? Is that all that, like they almost act like there's a monthly update or something like that. And if we wait till the 9th month, it's fully updated and then we can jump on it.
Yep.
So that's case in point, that is a factor really not related to the world market we're currently in, but still pushing part of that wait to the last minute buy.
Yep, for sure. So this time of the year it's not a hurry, it's not an urgent buying pattern. Like you said, where people have been waiting to the last minute to buy stuff. That's not where we're at right now. This is I'm buying a sprayer, I'm buying a planter, I'm buying a tractor because I need it for, obviously need a tractor for fall, but I'm buying the planter that I want or the sprayer that I want going into this upcoming season. So it's a different kind of time frame, but still at the same time, it's one of the three. I always call it one of the three buying patterns out there for sure. All right, man. So you are out on the internet. I saw something you did another day called High Plains Wholesale. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so we started a little deal called High Plains Wholesale Equipment, and what that is kind of basically what you would assume, the wholesale offshoot of 21st, where we kind of do, it's those that have followed me a while on Twitter and bought from me and whatever, it's kind of back to that, but more of a stand on its own thing instead of just airing on Twitter.
Right.
More of a not enterprise, separate enterprise, but it's kind of its own deal here. So that's what we're doing. Kind of a more, I would call it more of a a different level of social media presence than what I used to do on Twitter. More, not more interactive, but more to it, I guess I would say. There always be videos and this kind of stuff, not just my words and 4 pictures.
Right.
So try to have, a few featured items a week and that kind of thing on there, and just keep it rolling, see what happens.
Cool. So it's safe to say you're the chief entertainment officer of High Plains.
Yeah.
Wholesale?
I finally got those 3 initials, man.
You're the CEO. There you go. Where can people find you at on that so they can go out and check it out?
To start with, the place with the biggest presence is Facebook, High Plains Wholesale Equipment.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we're really rolling out with it. From there, it'll go to the others. But to start with, it's on there just because, simply put, a lot of people in the same dealership, that's the easiest way to everybody jump on and off the same thing and tweak and change and whatever. So,
right on.
But if you want to see videos of this mess, come find us.
Right on. Well, Aaron, appreciate you being on the podcast. We'll catch you again next time.
Absolutely, man.
Right on. Casey Seymour, you can find Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at Moving Iron LLC. You can find me everywhere that podcasts are. You can also go to AgWeb and see listen to the audio version of this, or go to the Farm Journal's YouTube page, and you can see that there. I want to thank John Deere for being a sponsor of this podcast, and I want to thank Sean Hackett, Aaron Fennell, Greg Peterson for being on the podcast this week, and we'll catch you again next time. So with that, I'm Casey Seymour. Let's go, Iron folks. Out.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next week. And remember, Moving Iron is available on Farm Journal's YouTube channel and anywhere podcasts are found. So until next time, let's move some iron.